Welcome everyone to the 2018 Preschool Mindfulness Summit. I'm really happy to welcome our next guest, Whitney Stewart. She's a very well-known author and has written many children's books that I'm sure a lot of you know. And if not, we're going to mention all these underneath the video so you can order them. My favorite one is Meditation is an Open Sky, which I've been using with schools all over the world, really, but a lot in Asia, and the kids just really love this book. So I was very happy that she agreed to join us. She also has a new book that's come out called Mindful Kids, 50 Mindfulness Activities for Kindness, Focus, and Calm. Which I can't wait to read. And she has another book coming out soon. When is it coming out?
Mindful Me?
Yeah.
It's coming out in April. And that's for middle grade. That's for middle grade kids.
Yeah, so middle age, but some people might have older siblings, and there's might be teachers on here. It's called Mindful Me, Mindfulness and Meditation for Kids. So that sounds like another good one. And Whitney's done lots of things like interview the Dalai Lama, which was really interesting to hear, and hike to Buddhist monasteries, and she does all kinds of things, travels the world and teaches mindfulness to adults and children. So very excited to have her here. So welcome, Whitney, and thank you so much for coming.
Well, thank you very much, Helen, for having me. I'm excited to be here. It's a lovely event.
Thank you. So tell us first a little bit about your journey into mindfulness and how you got into this area in the first place.
Yep. So I had a very challenging childhood. My parents were alcoholic, and so were my grandparents and aunts and uncles. It was alcoholism runs in the family. Right. And so I had the childhood difficulty of living with, people who are addicted. And so that was number one. So I was always looking for some moment of quiet or peace or some ways to handle the chaos in my household. Then I went away to school, and I was a big athlete. And this is where I finally began to, I could fulfill my sense of who I was through athletics. I think just moving and being active and being outside was wonderful to me, and probably a way to stay healthy as well. But then I had a knee injury, or just deterioration of my knee, and I went to a surgeon who told me, and I was 15 at the time, and I was playing 3 competitive sports that year, and I was, just really thriving in my athletics. And the surgeon said to me, if he did a surgery, and he said, if your knees are deteriorating, if you stop competitive sports now, you will be walking when you're 40. Now I was 15 years old, so 40 seemed a long way off. And he said, but if you don't stop, I don't know if you'll be walking then. And so I stopped competitive sports, which made me very, very sad. And I went through a period of depression. But I found, I saw one day, I was walking in this town, and I saw a sign for a yoga class. And I asked my school if they would allow me to go to yoga class. I was at a boarding school at the time. And they said yes. I couldn't believe it. And in that yoga class, we learned to meditate. And I learned yoga at age 15. And back then in the 70s in America, yoga was pretty new in America. So it was a little weird and a little out there, which it isn't anymore. But I loved it. And the most important thing was that our teachers were a married couple, and the woman was pregnant. And I just somehow just loved watching her and all of her maternal grace teaching us yoga, to show also that you didn't have to be this flexible, bendy person. You could also be a pregnant mother and do yoga. So it just opened, and actually conversations with them opened my mind. And of course, once I sat in meditation and started doing yoga, I felt a completely different inner experience than one I'd ever had before. So it built, and then, so that was the start of it. And I was always looking from then, when I went off to college and afterward, I was always looking for teachers. And I I went to Tibet on a trip with my mother, Tibet in Nepal and Thailand, and we were in the Himalayan mountains hiking and going to monasteries. And I just got to Lhasa and looked at the Potala, and I can't express it, but I said, something about this feels very familiar. I need to learn about this. And so that's how I journeyed into going to interview the Dalai Lama and living in Dharamsala, India for a while and beginning to learn meditation.
Amazing. Yeah, sounds exciting. So what inspired you then to start writing books for children about mindfulness and meditation?
Well, so I had been a children's book writer. Actually, I started writing children's books when I was in 10th grade. So I was, 17, and starting to submit them. So I was beginning on my journey, but I always knew I wanted to write books for children. And then when I got to Lhasa, as I was just describing, I said, oh, I'm going to write a book about I want to write a book about the Dalai Lama. So that was the beginning of it, was just in writing a book about the Dalai Lama. And so then when I ran around to schools giving a slide presentation about who he was and what he meant to the world and his teachings on kindness and compassion, I would always offer just a short 3-minute meditation for my audiences at schools and libraries. And so that's when I began. That was in 1990, I believe. That's when I began to teach mindfulness and meditation, but in the context of being a school author. And then I started writing and then I wrote a book called Becoming Buddha. And again, I asked the Dalai Lama, how would you go about teaching children to meditate? And he gave me an example, and it's in that book. And so then little by little, I was just always wanting to write to go along with my teaching, but publishers weren't buying it back then because mindfulness was just new. And I was teaching it in a non-denominational way, but they didn't know what it was. And I've had to finally just explain to editors that anybody can do it, from a small child to an ancient grown-up, an ancient grandparent, great-grandparent. It's a matter of finding your inner wisdom. And slowly, of course, we all know how that's shifted in the world, and now people are beginning to understand that you don't have to be of any particular religion or any religion at all. It's a matter of just being human and going inside and sitting in the moment. So
really become well known and it's everywhere nowadays.
Yes, but it really wasn't back then, back in the 90s. So
So, well, I'm really happy that you wrote all these books, because they've been so helpful to so many kids I know personally. So what are the benefits? Most of the people watching are preschool teachers, parents of toddlers or young children. So what are the benefits that you see of young children learning mindfulness or mindfulness meditation?
I think that well, the first one is allowing children time in the classroom or at home, of course, to not be busy all the time, just somehow to be able to have the tools to calm themselves down, to look inward, to feel that inner experience of their inner wisdom voice. Tools for handling difficult emotions. We all have emotions, and emotions are natural. But when they start building, we don't often have a way to deal with them. We don't know how to. And we just want to react to our anger or our sadness. And I wish that I had had tools when I was young to deal with my emotions of growing up in a very challenging household, but I didn't have them. So sometimes I would find myself, in a corner, just crying my eyes out. And had I been given some mindfulness tools back then, I think I would have had an easier time I wouldn't have been able to change the outside circumstances of my life, but I would have been able to help myself deal with those experiences better. I think it helps, mindfulness helps a child build inner resilience. It helps to deal with stress and anxiety, school pressure. It also helps children to have an authentic voice, to feel comfortable in their own skin and deal with such things as bullying. But giving them a way of self-empowerment such that they can show kindness and compassion to themselves and then extend that outward and show kindness and compassion to others to help build a community. And in a healthy community, bullying isn't part of that because you've embraced that child. Bullying usually comes from fear or anger, or a child not having mindfulness tools or having tools to deal with their own difficulties. And if you have built a healthy community, then you allow that child who's experiencing difficulties to feel accepted and loved. And therefore you're helping to diffuse that child's need for bullying and getting attention. So I think these are all very, very important reasons for our incorporating mindfulness in the classroom.
Yeah, definitely. It's something I'm really passionate about as well. Like you said, you just think, imagine if you learned this when you were in preschool, if it's all around the world learn this in preschool, how different will the world be? It's an amazing tool, isn't it?
Yes.
So, Whitney, can you share some practical activities or strategies that parents or teachers can use with young children to develop mindfulness? You know, they have quite short attention spans and don't like to sit for too long. So what can we do?
So I like to keep my mindfulness practices very short with children, obviously depending upon the age. I'm going to use a couple of the activities from Mindful Kids right now. This is actually a set of cards. It isn't a book, it's a set of cards with a little fold out, a folder in the beginning to explain what's going on. And these cards are divided into 5 sections. One is to start your day, to feel grounded and feel strong and focused. Another section is finding calm, so learning to handle tricky or challenging emotions. The third is focus, strengthening your mind, waking up your brain. So when kids are in the classroom, for example, and they're all sluggy and tired and not focused, then these are activities. A lot of them are more movement oriented, or using your hands, or swinging your arms to just move around and feel focused. Then opening your heart and accepting life with kindness and compassion. Kindness is a very important element of mindfulness practice. So feeling a sense of self-acceptance and connection to the world, and then a whole section of rest and relaxation to ease a busy mind. And so there are 10 cards in each section. So I'm just going to choose a couple of my favorites that just spoke to me this morning. Of course, I always start with taking 3, taking 3 mindful breaths, and we have a card for that. And so this is
illustrations.
Yes, they're beautiful. They're by Mina Braun, who's a German illustrator, and they're absolutely gorgeous. And we were very interested in focusing on children around the world, so that these would be very available and attractive and interesting to anyone. And again, on the cover, it says, for kids age 4 to 104. Right. All right. So I don't want to limit them just to small children. So just very, very simple. And most people who practice mindfulness know this, but it begins with the breath. And why does it begin with the breath? Because the breath is natural for us. We do it all the time. That's how we stay alive, but we're not always paying attention to it. So if we can anchor with the breath, then it's a way we don't need any other tools other than just ourselves, to just focus in on breathing. And so I ask children to sit mindfully with your spine straight and your body relaxed. And there's a little bit of an explanation in that in these cards, set of cards. And then every morning, just notice your breathing and take 3 soft, slow, mindful breaths and feel them in your body. And I try to teach them to feel in and feel the first breath coming into your nose. Feel it tickling your nostrils, and breathe out and count 1. And I like to put particular attention on the exhalation. Breathe in as if you don't even have to think about it, and breathe out and count 1. And you actually don't even have to count 1 after you get used to doing this, because you can do more than 3 but it's just focusing just lightly on the out breath. And then breathe in again and notice how your breath fills your lungs. You can even notice how it expands your rib cage. And breathe out and count 2. And then breathe in a 3rd time and see the air expanding your middle. And notice if your tummy looks round like a ball as it's filled with air. And breathe out and count or notice your 3rd breath. And then repeat this for 2 or more rounds of breathing into your nose, into your lungs, into your tummy. And you can breathe mindfully to feel awake and grounded and ready for the day. And this is very, very simple. But I wanted to do a card on this just to explain that it's using your own body, your felt experience of this breath that is part of mindfulness. You're not so much thinking about your breathing, you're feeling your breathing as it is experienced in your body. So that's one. And I like to use a lot of visualization when I'm teaching mindfulness, particularly for small children, because in some mindfulness practices, practitioners just focus on the breath. They just sit and focus on the breath. And that can be challenging for children for a great length of time. For not all children, but for some children. And so I add to that a visualization practice. So we're going to try rings of light. And in rings of light, I ask, sit mindfully with your spine straight and your body relaxed. Close your eyes and take 3 soft, slow, mindful breaths. Now imagine a glowing white light of wisdom between your eyebrows. This is your inner wisdom. And breathe out and send that light out around you like a ring of protection. This is now your wisdom surrounding you in white light, your first ring of protection. And then see a red light of courage or bravery or strength inside your throat. And breathe out and send that red light around you. And now you're sitting in 2 lights of protection. You have your light of wisdom, which is white, and your red light of courage and bravery and strength. Now finally see a blue light of calm inside your heart. You could just really notice that blue light, your whole heart area, just shining in a blue light of calm. And send that blue light around you as a 3rd ring of protection. And now you're in your own lights of white and red and blue. Again, that's wisdom and courage and calm. And take a moment to feel safe inside those lights. And when you're ready, just take 3 more mindful breaths again at your own pace. And you can end that whenever you feel comfortable. And you can take those lights of protection that come from inside of you. Take that with you as you go through the rest of your day.
Wow, I love that. That is amazing. And kids will love all that. You know, they have such imaginations and things. So I think the way that you, well, obviously it's a visualization, so they'll be imagining, but yeah, I feel calm just from listening to that. So, yeah, that's great.
I think an important part of it is too that this is meant to also teach that children have these inner resources.
Yeah.
But when you're frightened or angry or upset or rushed or pressured, you don't know how to find those inner resources. And you don't have to go off into another, a special room, meditation room. You can have a special meditation cushion, which would be lovely, but you're not always going to have that opportunity. So you could actually practice this when you're waiting in line sometime, at school, when children are lining up to go to lunch, or when you're in a grocery shop, maybe if your parents and children are in a grocery shop and they're waiting in a long line to pay for groceries. You can practice these practices standing right there and just stopping for a moment. If you're impatient and want to get through the line, just letting go of that for a second and sitting there and doing 3 mindful breaths, or doing the visualization of rings of light, and going and finding your own inner resources at any time during the day. But it's particularly helpful when you're feeling challenged, of course.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Do we have time for another one, or shall we? Or shall we move on? One more? Okay. Let's see. So this one, mindfulness practice it's not all about me. It's also about sharing and kindness and giving and generosity, which helps us. It helps us as our gift to the world. And so this is about sharing friendship. And you can sit mindfully with your spine straight again, and close your eyes and take 3 soft, slow, mindful breaths. Again, you could also stand and do this while you're waiting in line somewhere. Think of someone or something that makes you happy. Maybe it's a person you love, or a special pet, something that just makes you feel warm and tender inside, or some person. Imagine your feelings for that person or that pet as golden rays of light in your heart. Breathe in and out and feel those golden rays of light growing stronger and stronger inside your heart. And then send that golden light from yourself into a friend who needs kindness. Maybe it isn't even a friend. Maybe it's someone you're having a difficulty with at that time, at that moment. But send your golden rays. It's like sending your golden rays of sunshine to that other person. And in your mind, see that other person responding to your golden rays of friendship and sunshine and smiling. And with your next out breath, send your golden rays again to someone you don't know very well. And see that person receiving your light. And finally, you can breathe in and out and share your golden rays of sunshine with someone who you feel grumpy towards. And watch that kindness help that person. And finally, share your golden light with everyone in the world. You could start with your own school, your own classroom, your own school, your own town or village or city, and then get bigger and bigger, and imagining your golden ray of sunshine just shining down on the entire world and planet. And smile with a happy feeling that you're sharing with others. And take 3 more soft, mindful breaths before you open your eyes and go on with your day.
Wow, that's beautiful. I love that so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kindness, I think, is so important, isn't it? The teaching of kindness can solve so many issues in the world, and
Yep.
I love that, how it starts.
And it has to start with kindness to yourself, because sometimes we don't realize how unkind we are to ourselves. We have a little voice that say, oh, you're so dumb, you shouldn't have done that, or oh, you're stupid, you're not going to pass this test, or you might have this sense of not being kind to yourself, but you don't even realize it. Yeah. So start with being kind to yourself.
Very nice. So if for the parents watching, if they want, what would you say is the best thing to start as like a simple daily habit that can bring mindfulness into the house? A lot of parents say to me, oh, I don't know where to start, and
Yep.
I have to read all these books, and so what's just a simple thing that they could do?
Yeah, and that very statement that you just made, oh, it's so hard, I don't know where to start, is what compels me to write simple explanations of mindfulness. And that is, it doesn't have to be complicated. It really doesn't. And I think, many books, not just my own, of course, make it simple and bring it down to the essence. And I would start with just think, number one, in your mind, thinking of it as not complicated. Okay. So it's an attitude thing, and start with easy, mindful breathing. You could take time for parents, let's say you're waking your children up in the morning to go to school. If you still do that, if they're not doing that on their own yet, you could just, as they wake up, you could just take a moment then, and you could do a mindfulness practice. You could do mindful breathing, just 3 mindful breaths, or a one that I like to try is feeling grateful in the morning. You could do this either when you wake up or when you go to sleep. You could feel, sorry, we had a little outside noise. That's all right with you. Just a moment of feeling gratitude, and just say one thing that you feel grateful for today. And that might sound overly simplistic, but actually, if you plant that seed of gratitude every morning, you'll begin to realize, oh, there are so many things in my life that I feel grateful for that are giving to me. At bedtime, I would again encourage a mindful moment. Children take their worries with them to bed. They might have trouble sleeping. So I would try a visualization practice, or a gratitude moment, or a sharing friendship practice. I have, in this set of cards, there are a lot of practices for calming themselves down. There's one called Folding Flower that really is a visualization that helps you right before you go to sleep, calm, dark, as if you were a flower folding its petals down. Would try those. I would keep a mindfulness journal with your child. And if your child can't write, then your child can draw, or your child could dictate to you, and you could write out what the child says. And then I would talk a little bit about sharing feelings and emotions. And perhaps the child will say what particular emotion that he or she had that day, and then talk about ways the child reacted to that emotion, and was it helpful or unhelpful reaction. And then together talk about, well, what could be another way of handling that emotion when that emotion arises the next time. I would create a space in your home for quiet reflection and mindful listening. And if you have a small apartment, that might be challenging, but you could just find maybe perhaps where you sleep, or even if it's just a corner in the kitchen, but just for a moment, or just a time when that corner is going to be a mindfulness corner. If you have space, then you could actually keep a mindfulness cushion somewhere, and you could put little pictures on the wall or have flowers or whatever would help you feel in the moment of gratitude and calm and generosity and kindness. So I would do that. I think it's very important for parents to model mindful behavior, and by that they would also be practicing themselves. So if you want your child to practice mindfulness techniques, you really do benefit from practicing yourself and trying it together, finding a moment where you can practice together. Okay. And see, another thing I thought of is also just times, even when you're brushing your teeth or washing your hands before supper or taking a shower. Let's just say we're washing our hands before supper. You can wash your hands and do it slowly and really pay attention and be in that moment, not just hurrying to get your teeth, your hands washed before something else, but actually feeling the water on your hands, being in the moment, relaxing your muscles as the water drips on your hands. Notice how the soap is on your hands and how you're lathering up your hands, and doing it, slowly and mindfully, and noticing your fingers touching your other fingers and what it feels like to have cool or warm water on your hands. And it's really about paying attention in the moment to your felt experience and going inward and feeling it, and not, as we always say, and not just living on autopilot and getting from one thing to the next. So
I love that. There's so many ideas in there, and they're all simple things, but just take a minute or two, so parents can start implementing, one or two of those things, and it's definitely going to help, which probably brings us to our next question. Some of the parents that I work with, they feel like their house is very chaotic and they're, racing, taking kids from one activity to the other, and it's just, they feel there's a lot of chaos in their house, and they can't imagine how it can go from that to this calm, mindful state. So what would you recommend for those parents who can't even imagine?
Yeah, I think that may be a common experience this day and age. Yeah. And I do think that it's exacerbated by our technology, always being available and always feeling like you have to respond, particularly to cell phones and, social media. So number one, I would say start by being gentle with yourself and being kind to yourself and setting reasonable expectations for yourself. It took a long time for your household to become chaotic like this. So it's not going to happen overnight. Oh, I just bought a mindfulness book and by tomorrow my house is going to be calm. It's going to take little steps and little changes, which may not feel comfortable always at that moment. But start where you are, not where anybody else is, not a picture of some, person who's just the epitome of mindfulness and looks all calm all the time. It's just to start where you are and take time for yourself. Even if you say, oh, I can't possibly take time for yourself, you really can take 3 minutes if it's only 3 minutes. But in those 3 minutes, just you can make them count, of go inward and relax and breathe, but not just breathing, but because you're still, sometimes when you're doing a breath meditation, you still can very easily get caught up in your head and your to-do list of what you've got to do next. But what you want is to feel the muscles of your body softening and relaxing. So really what you want is just for a moment, feeling, perhaps you're waiting for your child in a car if you're going to pick up your child, for example, when you're parked and waiting. At that moment, don't check your phone, turn it off for a second and just take 3 minutes to feel your breath. But more importantly, feel that relaxation and that letting go. And the letting go comes from really softening your muscles as the breath comes in. And for that 3 minutes or 4 minutes or 6 minutes or whatever it is while you're waiting, you don't do anything else. You just let it go. And if your mind is busy with thoughts, I get that. That's normal. That's just normal in our busy, chaotic life. Don't fight that. You don't actually need to try to stop thinking. Thinking is what your mind does, planning and thinking. But what you can do is say, oh, I notice I have a busy mind, and get curious about that. What does it feel like in my body to have a busy mind? And the more you practice it, and it doesn't happen the first time, that's why they call this a practice. It takes a while, but the more you notice it, the more you realize, I am not my thoughts. My thoughts are here and they might keep going, but I can soften my body, I can calm my body, I can relax my body, even if my mind is doing this. And you begin to understand that You may have thoughts, but they're not necessarily true or real. They're just your brain working. But go into your felt heart experience. Feel what it feels like in your heart area for a moment. I would also try to model patience and kindness. And very importantly, again, we'll go back to gratitude. Model gratitude. I would, as we tried in that last example, try to incorporate mindfulness in your family's daily practice. Now, if you have older children and teenagers, I get that too. They might say, no, I don't want to do this. And they might always want to be on their phones or their social media. You might have to come together with a family and say, this is our moment. We're going to turn off the television. We're going to put away our devices, and we're going to talk to each other. And we're going to talk to each other and listen to what are the needs of each person in your family. And don't interrupt when it's one person's turn. Everybody else must listen mindfully and not be thinking about what you're going to say next, but really mindfully listening without anticipating your answer to what that other person is saying. And perhaps even jotting down the needs of each person in the family, and then find a way that you can try. You may not be able to meet everybody's needs, but try to meet everybody's needs, or at least have some kind of compromise that you could all agree on. Maybe it's dinner one night a week where everybody turns off phone, television, and any other device, and then cooks a dinner together and sits down and eats dinner together. Now, a lot of families, they just don't cook and eat together. And I felt that is one very, very important way of, number one, mindful family living, listening to each other and really understanding what's going on in each other's lives. But also, we usually eat more healthfully when we make a home cooked meal. We pay more attention to the portions that we're eating. We're not just mindlessly, digging through a bag of potato chips and, overeating or whatever it happens to be. So those are, let me just see if I had some others. I just try to find ways to meet the emotional needs of each family member. And if that's not possible, then also practice being flexible. And you might feel a little rigid in the way you like to do things, and you might have to give up some things that are comfortable to help the next person. But it needs to be a compromise. It needs to be helpful. Something to all of you, so that we can begin to understand each other and each other's needs.
I love that one where you said ask each member what they need and really listen. I think that's something really, really important, and not too many people do that, do they? So, to be able to express what you really need to the people who love you the most and are going to support you is something really wonderful. So thank you for sharing that. So we're almost coming to the end. So just before we finish, can you tell us about a success story that you've had with a particular child with your work, or any last tips that you might have that you wanted to share?
So this is a classroom example that I had. And after hurricane, I live in New Orleans, Louisiana, in America. And after Hurricane Katrina in 2005, I was helicopter rescued from the city. So I learned a lot about what people were struggling with, of being, having to be helicopter rescued. And when we came back to the city almost 5 months later, of course, the city was in shambles. 80% of the city was devastated. And I volunteered to teach creative writing in a public school. And the children in that public school were from low-income families. They had great challenges. Their families were dispersed. They didn't have a lot of resources. And it was very difficult for me to teach creative writing to them. They had been through such traumatic experiences. They were there when their houses were flooding, that these children were scarred by these difficult challenges. And so they wouldn't sit still. They couldn't focus at all. We haven't really talked about focus at that much, but so I wanted to figure out ways of helping them focus so that they could sit calmly and write a story. And I think classroom teachers can really understand this. They probably know this experience really well. When children come to the classroom, they're bringing with them, of course, their whole families and everything that happens to them in their families and in their homes. And so we might have one very sad child. We might have one very angry child. We might have a very frightened child. Or you might have a very happy child who's happy-go-lucky, but you're putting them all in one room. And you've got one or maybe two teachers, and how do you deal with all these different children with all of their different needs? We've just talked about families and listening to each other as a family, in a family, but the teacher needs to help do this as well. And so I began to incorporate mindfulness in this classroom. I had no plans to in the beginning because this was a writing class. But I did visualization practices with these children. I did relaxation techniques with these children, a lot of breathing, but also stretching and movement and helping practices that help them focus their mind. So we would do, that's why visualization practices in particular, some of them, when you're perhaps drawing with your mind, for example, some of those drawing techniques in your mind, those can help children focus. So I did a lot of those with children. And I remember the very first time I tried this, one child, this was a relaxation technique, one child, because there were kids in my class were really angry with each other. They were fighting a lot. And oh yes, and I asked them, does anybody in the class know of a way to deal with conflict without fighting, without hitting? And one boy said his parent told him when someone hits him, he had to hit back. And another child said, my parents told me the same thing. I think parents were trying to teach their children to be strong. But in that, the child wasn't learning how to resolve a conflict. So we did a lot of talking about resolving conflict. We did a lot of relaxation techniques. And I remember one child after a relaxation exercise said to me, oh, wow, I felt like I was floating, as if everything around me softened like a cloud and I was just there. And, I think it sounded to me as if that might have been the first chance, and I don't know this for sure, but the first time that child had ever experienced that kind of relaxation before. And that child had been always quite agitated. And I want you to know that by the end of the year of doing this, those children, every child had a story that we published in our school book. Every child had finished it, had performed it in front of a classroom, had illustrated it, and then we performed it for a whole audience of parents and teachers. So we really went from this chaotic classroom in the beginning of the year to a whole group of children who were comfortably and happily performing their art, their writing in front of parents. So that was one good experience. So again, you asked me any last tips. I think is the adults need to practice kindness and compassion for themselves, model this behavior, listen to the needs of the children around them in their classroom or at home, and work with, does my child need a relaxation technique? Does this child need a focusing meditation? What does this child need, or what do these children need? And going from there. But again, it doesn't have to be complicated. It can be very, very simple.
Well, thank you so much, Whitney. That was packed full of ideas, tools, strategies that people can just implement right away. And as we mentioned before, we'll list out all the books, so you can order those if you want to use them yourself with your child, or if you're in a school in your classroom. And I just want to say once again, thank you. It was really interesting, and I really enjoyed meeting you and speaking with you. And I can't wait to read your future books as well. I'm sure there's more to come.
Thank you very much, Helen. It was lovely to have this conversation with you.